Good morning. Today we'll discuss the nature of poetic truth or Aristotle's defense of poetry. The nature of poetic imitation. Poetry imitates like any other fine arts, but poetry is not a mere mimicry, it is not a slavish representation of surface reality. It imitates imaginatively and so gives us higher truth, a higher reality than is the case with the other arts. It uses its material, disregards the non essential, the purely accidental, and therefore gives us the universal. In other words, the process of poetic imitation is a process of idealization, and in this way is achieved a higher truth, a higher reality than that of nature. Plato has accused poets of telling lies. He has called poetry the mother of lies, and so has banished some poets from his ideal commonwealth. Poets have no idea of reality, they imitate merely shadow of shadows, and so poetry, he has said, that is twice removed from reality. Whereas Aristotle, on the other hand, shows that poetic truth is much higher and universal than that of history, and that poetry is more conducive to understanding than philosophy itself. The poet gives us not reality but reality idealized. It is not the function of the poet, Aristotle tells, that to relate what has happened, but what may happen, what is possible according to the law of probability or necessity. The poet and the historian in this way differ not by writing in prose or in verse, but the true difference is that one relates what has happened and the other what may happen. Therefore, the first distinguishing feature of poetry is that it deals with the universal, not the particular, and it does not merely tell the story of a particular individual but reveals the permanent possibilities of human nature. Its truth is a higher truth, and so it is higher subject of study than history. History is based upon facts, whereas poetry transforms those particular facts into universal truths. This is done by eliminating the non-essential and exhibiting the logical link-up of events, the connection of cause and effect, which or that links one event with the another. In a historical narrative, the various events and incidents are narrated in a chronological order, and in this way the causal connection between them is obscured. But the poet eliminates the non-essential, the merely incidental, and shifts his material in order in a way that reveals the strict logical order which characterizes actual experience, but which is obscured from view of the non-essential. Then is the probability and necessity. The poet brings out the probable and necessary link-up of various events, both in the development of plot and also in the internal working of character. The probability which the poet follows is not mere slavish adherence to reality, but it is a mere verisimilitude, but something much higher. Butcher, who is a renowned scholar, has rightly emphasized that the rule of probability, as also that of necessity, refers rather to the internal structure of a poem. It is the inner law which secures the cohesion of the parts. The men and women whom we meet in poetry are characters of drama. They are not average men and women, but much better and finer, and their thoughts and deeds are not merely those of meaner mortals. Therefore, the probable laws of their conduct cannot be measured from the conduct of average humanity. The higher creations of poetry are not governed by the rules of ordinary experience. Then there is the charge of untruth, that is the ideal reality. In chapter 25, Aristotle has examined in detail the charges of untruths and impossibilities brought against poetry. He has set aside the minor inconsistencies and technical inaccuracies, for they are not a serious flaw in themselves as far as poetic art is concerned. He boldly faces the fundamental objection against poetry that the world of poetry presents not facts but fiction. Poetry is criticized as untrue and unreal, but Aristotle has replied that poetry is not reality but a higher reality, what ought to be, not what is. Poetry transcends facts and reality. It represents things which were not and never can be in actual experience. It gives not the reality but the idea of reality in the poet's mind. It gives the ideal reality that the poet has in his mind about the characters. Then is the shaping power of the imagination. The poet or the dramatist may take his own materials from the rich sources of tradition, myth, and legend, because what has happened does not exclude what may happen. Moreover, the stories from traditional sources have one great advantage, that they are easily credible and available. What has actually happened is easily believed. However, when the poet borrows his material from reality, he must take care to the universal or to universalize these stories. He must free to share the incidents and or to remove the non-essential. Therefore, he must purify it and idealize it. The shaping power of his imagination must work upon gross reality and transmute it into an imaginative truth. Aristotle's emphasis throughout is that on the imaginative treatment of the subject, whether it is taken from tradition or invented by the poet. So it is the shaping power of the imagination which is important and which differentiates poetic truth from the truth of history. Poetic truth is different from the truth of fact. Things there are that have never happened and never will happen, but poetically speaking, they are more true than the occurrences of daily life. And next is the willing suspension of disbelief. The probable impossibilities, according to Aristotle, are to be preferred to improbable possibilities. The poet needs to know to confine himself to actualities. He may tell lies, as Plato has said, but he must do so skillfully that it is not revealed. In the words of Coleridge, he must procure a willing suspension of disbelief, that is, that whatever lies he tells or the improbabilities he introduces in his poetry, they appear credible to the reader. But by the vividness of his narrative, by the minuteness of detail, and above all, by the natural sequence of cause and effect, things are made to happen as they would have happened, and they appear real. By this artistic treatment, the effect is so lifelike that an illusion of reality is created, and for time being we forget that such things never were there. In this way, the improbable seems probable and the incredible is made to look credible. And what type of improbable can be there? First, there is the material improbability, the improbability regarding facts for which willing suspension of disbelief can be procured. It can easily be made logical and inevitable. Secondly, there is the irrational. The irrational is a much greater stumbling block, and it requires the skill of a Homer to make it probable. The irrational contradicts the operation of logic and causality, which are the very basis of art. It should therefore be introduced only when absolutely necessary, and then only it can arouse wonder and admiration. The use of irrational may be justified in epic, but in tragedy it should be used only rarely, as on the stage it is likely to seem highly ludicrous and improbable. Moral improbabilities. Thirdly, the improbability may be of a moral nature. That is, it may be a violation of the laws which lie at the very root of human conduct. Such gross violation of moral laws does not admit of easy artistic treatment, and human nature can reconcile itself with difficulty to such improbabilities. Hence, their introduction is to be avoided. To sum up, we can say that poetry is not a photographic representation of reality in all its trivialities and accidents. Poetic truth is of much higher order. The poet deals with reality, but with the reality which is of a particular nature and is non-essential. In this way, poetic truth is permanent and universal. The poet deals with the permanent and universal facts of nature. He idealizes reality, but in doing so, he still remains true to the principles of laws of nature. In this way, the poetic world, which basically is still true to nature, is more intelligible and comprehensible. It is more philosophical than philosophy itself, for it is more conducive to understand as it presents permanent truths in an easy, pleasant and concrete forms. While history deals with the particular and the ephemeral, poetry deals with permanent and the universal. It is not tied to particular facts as history is, but selects and orders its material, and therefore it's through its imaginative handling of reality it reveals the laws of nature. Its truth is much higher than that of history, and it has greater organic unity as the non-essential is eliminated. Poetry is higher than history because it deals with the universal and manifests the cause or the first principle of things. The poet seizes and reproduces a concrete fact, but he transfigures it so that the higher truth, the idea of the universal, shines through it. Therefore, Aristotle has justified poetry and had answered the charges which Plato has brought against it, that the poetry is far from reality. Thank you.